Hey, KNES 3300. This is our third lesson on leadership theories, and we have seen parts of it before in last class, but we're largely talking about the multidimensional model of leadership. It's what's used more recently. Uh, it's a very strong model in terms of the research that's been done around it in leadership. But it's also a sport model. It was developed primarily for the sport domain. A lot of it that has been tested has a lot of merit in regards to studying leadership effectiveness even outside of sport. And it's fairly comprehensive. So if we were to build the model, we start with a few questions. So the first is asking, what do most people want from their sport participation? So you can ask yourself right now, if you had a coach, what is it that you would expect him or her to help you achieve? And usually the answers are going to fall into one of two categories. That's a category of satisfaction or a category of performance. So now we take it a step farther. In achieving that satisfaction and performance, the coach behaves in a particular way during practices and games. So that's their actual behavior. Can you now think of some things that influence that person's behavior? And then we want to be even more particular than that. Can we be very specific with the things that influence satisfaction and performance? What are the things that a coach does that is going to impact your satisfaction and performance? And what then determines the things that he or she does? So that leaves us with it wasn't quite that quick or easy. Cheladari is, has done a lot of excellent research around the multidimensional model, but certainly in sport management as well. Often considered the godfather of sport management. But anyway, not that that's important. It's vital to have an understanding of the characteristics that will or will not influence our leadership qualities. So we need to take into account the characteristics that will influence leader behaviors, and then leader behavior ultimately determines the member's satisfaction and performance level. So, as I mentioned, the multidimensional model is a very strong model for sport, uh, but because of its extensive nature, we're able to test numerous aspects of the multidimensional model. So it's more than observational data that's been put together. We could also relate previous findings to more current multidimensional model updates. So when we see this word antecedents, I mentioned this before in class too. These are things that are true or in place before the interaction. So we can think of them as fairly fixed characteristics of the sport ecosystem. So one way to test the multidimensional model is using tools based on the leadership scale for sports. So the leadership scale for sports was developed in an effort to measure 5 different coaching behaviors from both the coaches, so that's perceived, and the athletes' perspectives. And from the athlete, it was perceived and preferred perspectives. So the leadership scale for sports can really examine the middle column here on 5 subscales. So we have, I guess, just to highlight this middle column for you first, the required leader behaviors. These we can think of rules and regulations or a code of conduct or just things we would consider age appropriate behavior. We have actual leader behavior, so that's what is observed, and then our preferred leader behavior. And we can consider preferred behavior both on the side of the leader, what is it that they prefer to do, but also the participants, what type of leader behavior is preferred by the participants engaging in the activity. So the 5 coaching behaviors that are measured, according to Sheladori, the first 2 democratic and autocratic behaviors, these are going to represent the decision-making styles that the coaches commonly use. So now with looking at where this is in the multidimensional model, it implies that these behaviors represent decision-making style of the leader and can result then in different responses. So the decision-making style could impact performance and satisfaction in those that are led anyway, and hopefully that's a little bit intuitive. Social support and positive feedback. Now this implies that these behaviors on the part of the leader can impact the motivation of an athlete or a student or a camper to participate. And then the last kind of subscale that's measured is the amount and quality of training and instruction that's given. So training and instruction corresponds to a task-oriented coach behavior, which aims to improve performance. The leadership scale for sports can test a number of different aspects of the model that relate to leader behaviors. So let's look at one area. We're going to look at a few for sure. So preferred, what behaviors should leaders have? Now, this was first examined by asking athletes, what do you think works best for you? What makes the season more enjoyable? What improves your performance the most? So Sheladori and Karen in 1983 looked at male basketball players across 4 developmental age groups. So it started quite young and moved all the way up to university age. And some of their results were neat. So a preference for high social support and autocratic behaviors kind of had a linear increase. And a preference for training and instruction was initially high, then decreased at around university age. So athletes may be socially conditioned to preferring less personal responsibility as they age, and those in sport may require more social support from those around them as they reach an elite level. Potential suggestion. One other, kind of repeated by Terry in 84. This looked at the not just preferred behaviors, but actually examined a whole lot of behaviors with kinesiology majors or phys ed majors preferred behaviors. So there were no significant differences in preferences across genders. Aside from male phys ed majors preferred more autocratic behaviors from their leaders, and females preferring more democratic behavior from their leaders. So next we're going to look at this word I mentioned previously is called congruence. So do leaders in sport actually do what those they lead prefer them to do? So the idea of congruence suggests that optimal performance and satisfaction will occur if leadership behaviors exhibited by a coach is congruent with the leadership behaviors the athlete prefers their coach to exhibit, and with those that are required. We can't break our code of conduct. Or what behaviors will be most likely to lead to satisfaction or a lack of satisfaction and performance, or maybe a lack of performance. So let's look at the congruence research. So congruence as it relates to performance. We're looking at performance here, not satisfaction. So Van Schaik et al., there were 4 initial descriptive findings that emerged from this analysis. So athletes who participated on teams that did not make playoffs desired more democratic coaching behavior. They also believed their coach exhibited too much autocratic behavior. They desired more social support from their coach and desired more positive feedback from their coach as compared to athletes who participated on teams that made the playoffs. Okay. And that making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, this is how they determined successful performance. The next study, Runa et al., looked at elite male soccer players. So 3 preferred behaviors were positive feedback, training and instruction, and democratic behavior, okay, in all scenarios. All preferred behaviors, okay, except autocratic behavior, were higher in the unsuccessful scenario, so they didn't do as well. So these behaviors directly relate to task-oriented skill development and would appear to have been identified by the elite players as essential coaching behaviors to enhance their performance and their subsequent likelihood of success. Now, there's also negative relationships between age and experience and social support, democratic behaviors, and positive feedback in the successful scenario, so those that won more, and between age and experience and social support and democratic behaviors in the unsuccessful scenario. So the findings therefore have implications for adapting our coaching leadership behaviors when players of different ages with different levels of experience encounter prolonged periods of success or failure. Maybe they're looking for different things at different times. So it leads us to a question now of are there other issues at play in terms of identifying preferred behaviors? So if we look at congruence and satisfaction, these three areas of leader behavior most affected an athlete's satisfaction with a coach. Okay? Training and instruction, positive feedback, and social support. In other words, so if a leader's actual positive feedback, social support, and training and instruction fell in line with what an athlete preferred, that athlete was most satisfied. That makes complete sense. This is what I would like a coach to do. This is what they did. I'm happy. Damon in 2009, looking specifically at congruency, noted that the congruency of preferred and perceived autocratic leader behaviors resulted in a significant increase in individual performance, personal treatment, team performance, and training and instruction satisfaction. So this begs the question as to how we as coaches can attempt to cater to the different needs of our athletes. One of the more comprehensive studies conducted, my timing was off here. There it is. My timing was fine. The button didn't work. 251 male basketball players and their coaches, looking at characteristics of the leader and whether they influenced the performance and satisfaction of the athletes. In addition, there was a secondary analysis as the characteristics are said to indirectly impact the consequences. So looking at the leader characteristics. So what did we see? The study examined not the content of and the congruence of our expectations of certain behaviors, but rather the frequency of those behaviors occurring. The more frequent rewards, social support, and democracy led to higher satisfaction. That would seem to be good. Okay, we do more of these things that make us happy, we're the happiest. Unless you're interested in linking satisfaction to performance. So the same study refutes the idea that they can be linked. With increased social support, while satisfaction was high, there was a correlation with worse performance. The team lost more. So what are some of the leader characteristics that were examined in the study? How did they play out in terms of performance and satisfaction? So some characteristics that showed up having some type of influence, being younger, having a better win-loss record, and less playing experience led to higher levels of satisfaction. These are characteristics, not behaviors, but they still had an impact. Okay, and these are, again, satisfaction, and the same study did not link satisfaction to performance. But they had more fun. Don't let me talk down to fun, it is important. So in 2007, Celadori made one really important modification to the model. It was the incorporation of the concept of transformational leadership into the multidimensional model. So, in his view, leadership exhibited by coaches is largely concerned with a pursuit of excellence. In the process of pursuing excellence, the person is indirectly transformed from a relatively unaccomplished novice into an expert performer. Thus, successful coaches exhibit transformational leadership, and as such are incorporating the concept into the model, and whether they planned on it or not, but now incorporating it is necessary as well as it's easy. Um, in essence, the coach as the leader transforms member characteristics in terms of aspirations and attitudes and changes to the situational requirements by articulating a new mission, convincing the members of the viability of the mission and their capacity to achieve that mission. So because of its extensive nature, we're able to test numerous aspects of the multidimensional model or relate previous findings to the more current multidimensional model. The core addition to what we have now called a mediational model, kind of our next step, even though it was still many years ago, the introduction of mediators that are said to influence athletes' perceptions of coach behaviors. So these, mediators could be a lot of things or people, but so Smith and Small, really notable researchers in this area, worked to add a lot of depth to their data collection and used the CBAS, the Coaching Behavior Assessment System. And remind me to bring it to class one day. It's I don't know if it's used as much, but I've certainly spent time using it just as a curiosity to evaluate coaches, and asking other coaches to use it to evaluate me, just seeing if I can learn more about myself that way. So with the CBAS, it kind of deduced that while it does collect objective information, there were also these less subjective assessments that athletes and coaches made that could impact the learning environment. So an important objective tool, but there are things going on outside of it. Outside of that, this kind of leads us to the mediational model of leadership. So there's two core principles in the mediational model. The first is that coach behaviors influence athlete perceptions and recall. Now, leading into that, like the multidimensional model, Smith and Small suggested that both coach behaviors and player perceptions are influenced by factors specific to each one. For example, the coach behaviors are influenced by, let's say, the coach's individual difference variables. So those variables that are different among coaches, such as coaching goals and personality and philosophy, and that players are influenced by similar individual difference variables that are unique to the player. Also similar to the multidimensional model, is that individual difference variables for both coach and player combine with variables of the situation. So such as the sport and its nature and maybe previous records of the team to influence coach behaviors and player perception and recall. The core difference here is the model specifies that coach behaviors and its influence on athlete perceptions is in turn influenced by an athlete's evaluative reactions. I guess in other words, the effects of coach behaviors is mediated through the meaning that athletes give to the coach's behaviors. So think of notable coach behaviors that you've seen. You interpreted them differently than your teammates. I think that's a little bit intuitive. Maybe we don't consider it when we're looking, man, that coach is so mad. No, the coach is trying to help us refocus because we're goofing around. So that's then going to affect like the athlete's appraisal of his or her coach's behavior. And that appraisal serves as a mechanism through which a coach influences that athlete's attitudes towards the coach and their sporting experience in general. So let's assume an athlete perceives a coach to be supportive and helpful. he or she will likely have a positive attitude towards their coach and their sporting experience in general. The mediational model of leadership places a large emphasis on this evaluative piece than previous iterations of leadership models. So now, in an attempt to expand upon both the multidimensional and mediational models, there was a new one, another more recent model in 2002. Horn proposes the model of coaching effectiveness. So many of the predictions and pathways specified in the coaching effectiveness model are consistent with those from the mediational multidimensional models, but it works for us to use acronyms too. I don't like to continue to say coaching effectiveness model. Not that it's difficult, but the CEM is a good acronym, expands upon pathways in an effort to explain coaching behaviors and their effects in a more detailed, potentially more predictive manner. If we can explain coaching behaviors, maybe we can predict how certain coaches, like a more task-oriented coach, will act in particular situations with certain athletes. The different linkages and relationships specified in the CEM are based on a wide range of theoretical models. For example, the link between coach expectations and coach behaviors is supported by the principles of self-fulfilling prophecy. Achievement goal theory is also used to provide a rationale for identifying factors that impact coach behavior. So this is, both of these self-fulfilling prophecy and achievement goal theory, trying to show, I've mentioned the group of grade 7s and 8s that I'm coaching right now, girls. Because they said, oh, Ian's coaching this team, well, I guess we're getting a banner. And I said, hold on. I said, one, I don't know if we're good enough. Two, I don't care. It does nothing for me to win a middle school banner. I want this group of girls to relentlessly pursue two things. One, how much fun they can have playing volleyball. And two, to see how good they can get at volleyball. Those are our achievements. Maybe it leads to a banner. I really don't care. But all the only things we're talking about is can we kind of refocus to achieve our two goals, and those were kind of driven by me. But anyway, more specifically, the CEM is going to hypothesize that coaches who have more of a task orientation display behaviors that are consistent with that of task orientation. For example, going to emphasize self-referent goals rather than the goals that involve comparisons with others. Given that the core principles of the CEM are largely similar to the mediational model, the research supports that the main tenets of the mediational model also support the coaching effectiveness model. So the CEM did this by identifying and adding more explicit mediational pathways to the coaching process. So these pathways have been added to both the antecedents of coach behavior and the effects of coach behavior. For example, where we could see kind of specified individual difference variables and situational factors can combine to impact coach behavior, the CEM posits that the effects of these factors on coach behavior is mediated by coaches' expectancies, values, beliefs, and goals. Which, again, I use myself as an example. I could be a very different coach for a group of grade 7 and 8 girls if for some reason I were to end up valuing a banner on a wall. My coaching skills would be similar, but my behaviors might be quite a bit different. So going a step farther, the CEM identifies that coach behavior directly impacts athlete performance, but also has an indirect effect on athlete performance through their self-perceptions, beliefs, and attitudes. So these in turn impact athlete motivation and performance. So coach behavior directly impacting athlete performance and an indirect effect on athlete performance through their self-perceptions, beliefs, and attitudes, we can make them feel good about themselves. And that's human communication. We can build people up, we can tear them down. The various linkages and relationships specified in the CEM are based on a wide range of theoretical models. Given that the core principles of the CEM are largely similar to that of the multidimensional and mediational models of leadership, the research that supports the main tenets of those also supports that of CEM. So models of leadership in sport are rooted in social cognitive theory. This is another area that could be studied, and PhDs offered in social cognitive theory. The core tenets of social cognitive theory focus on the interrelationship among three sets of factors. That's namely personal factors, environmental factors, and sort of the behavioral outcomes. These factors are often described as being part of a reciprocal causal network whereby environmental, personal, and behavioral factors interact to determine a range of attitudinal and behavioral consequences. One of the key assumptions around social cognitive theory is that humans are all different, and these differences will influence the nature and outcomes of their interactions with others. That is, an identical set of interactions will have a different impact depending on the personality of the individuals involved. Some of the lame jokes that I use semester after semester, some classes find them hilarious. Some others get offended, and I don't know if they get offended, but maybe that I'm wasting their time. Who knows? I'll stop wasting your time. For a better example is maybe individuals high in self-esteem may respond differently to a coach criticism than individuals who have lower self-esteem. And again, I am seeing that with the grade 7s and 8s. I've got only one that will kind of, which is good. Like if we're talking about criers, and I coach grade 7 and 8 girls, and the only crying I've seen has been one who gets a little watery-eyed, but she wants no special treatment because of it. That's pretty good. But still, I know that if I give her more than 3 pieces of direct personal feedback, I'm kind of overdoing it. Whereas as others, they crave more and more and more, and they understand that my feedback is an attempt to help them get better. It's not me highlighting everything that they're doing incorrectly. But those ones also have a lot more experience in sport and have heard quite a bit of feedback and a bit older too. Social cognitive theory, there's another element too that the social cognitive theory approach is that human interactions don't occur in a vacuum. There's an ever-changing environmental context. The context influences the nature and outcomes of those interactions. So an identical set of interactions produce one set of outcomes, so at elite level sport, but different outcomes in also a different context. It's not just different people, and that's so like a youth physical education setting. Social cognitive models that have been developed in the context of sport delineate the complex social and cognitive processes that influence coach behaviors, as well as the effectiveness of those behaviors on athlete and team outcomes. So as sport continues to evolve, models of leadership are likely to see a growing shift towards understanding how leadership, if I could put that in quotations per se, devolves from a concept of a coach being the driver of change and performance to the role that the athlete may play in contributing to behavioral outcomes, because there is this dynamic environment, and the athlete certainly contributes. That's changed, this kind of understanding and through experience too, has changed what I look for in participants that I like to coach. The obedient yes coach, and they'll go and do it without much creativity or support for their teammates, isn't necessarily what I'm interested in. Coachability means a lot of things, and you want to tie that in. Personally, I want to tie it in with kind of the tenets of being a good or a great teammate. But that's it, kind of on our, as we finish up leadership theories. If there's any questions with this, please do not hesitate to ask. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.